we go through an analysis in the business ethics class about intention and consequence. And so it's like we have to separate these two things because a leader's intention, let's all assume that a leader is an ethical leader and that a leader is intending to do good, is trying to be effective. But the consequence is not effectiveness. It's actually counting against the outcome of the situation. And a leader that isn't able to see that intention isn't the full picture. You also have to look to see, you know, I'm happy that you're intending to build a better relationship with me, but what you're saying is kind of making me feel awkward. So the outcome or the consequences is not good. So that's yeah, that's well said. I want to frame the class, at least the conversation that we had tonight, like this: is we all understand, and as leaders ourselves, I'm also looking at other organizational leaders, and I'm also zooming in on the moral and ethical leaders. We want to assume that they mean well. We want to assume that they're trying their best. We want to assume that they're trying to wield as many positive influences on the environment as possible. That may not always be the case. That's a different conversation. But let's operate in the axiom of they're trying to do good. All right, great. So we're here. Leaders are trying to do good. If we operate with that axiom and we give them the benefit of the doubt and they're doing something that isn't helping or contributing to the situation, then we have to think, okay, maybe there's an element of wisdom that this leader has not achieved yet because they're doing something, they mean well, they have a good heart, that is not helping. And the chapter tonight is all about that. It's understanding the ability to assess a situation and to try to deploy a leadership style that is most relevant for that situation. And it's a constant iterative process of, hey, let me see what's going on. Let me try this. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try this. Okay, that didn't work. Let me back up and try a new one. And all of that happens within like 4 seconds of trying to observe and respond and being more adaptable. And this takes a level of presence. This takes a level of cognitive fluidity, and it takes a level of willingness to humble oneself and say, hey, just because I am a well-spoken, charismatic leader does not mean that I need to be well-spoken and charismatic in every single environment. We have, I've been in the presence of leaders that everybody sort of was smart in the room and everybody sort of knew what was going on. And the leader would sort of talk to us as if we were children. And it doesn't work. And I know that what this leader was trying to do was helpful and encouraging, and this was their style. And it was almost as if you were copying and pasting this talk over and over again, and it didn't come off right. It sounded as if they were just poo-pooing us and checking the box on their leadership, their ability to do the role of figurehead. They were just doing the figurehead thing, and it really wasn't working. And then I've also seen situations, and I have a bunch of videos, but I'm not going to show you one where a high impact leader was in an environment and tried a shtick, like tried to do a little motivational thing, and it didn't land. And stand-up comedians are really good at this. And they read the crowd and they adjusted like mid-presentation, and it worked. There's a great book by John Maxwell called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And this is the essence, right? We're not trying to, so leadership is the process of influencing people to attain organizational goals. And so our process of influence and persuasion, in a sense, needs to adapt to the people we're trying to influence. And if the outcome is we don't achieve our goal, then it doesn't matter what we did. So being able to be fluid in that environment, being able to connect with the people that we're leading, being able to be present with them in that moment, and being able to adapt our style to the situation is what we're going to talk about tonight. There's a couple of different models. I would say this is one of the most complex leadership theory conversations that we're going to have, but it's an interesting one. And I'll kind of preface it like this as well. There was a professor one time that explained to me that we were going over these different models in a theory, essentially. And every theory is wrong in some way or another. You can always look at this and say, you know what, there's a way, philosophers do this all the time. There's a way that I can demonstrate that that's not true in this circumstance. And so when we look at a model, that's not what we should be doing. The models are misplaced because there's so many of them. But what we should be doing when we look at these models tonight is asking this one question only. Can this model be useful to me in my leadership? That's it. Can I use something from this model? Something from this model, not the whole thing. It doesn't have to be right to become a more effective leader. So that's the only thing I want you to think about tonight is the usefulness of one or two aspects of these models, and how can we grab those usefulness cookies and apply them to our little dessert tray. And we're going to go over 3 or 4 of them in somewhat detail. And I'm going to define it. The leader behavior that is effective in one situation is ineffective in another. Leadership effectiveness is contingent on organizational situations. What's happening in the environment? Contingency is theory meaning one thing depends on other things. That's a big deal. My ability to disseminate knowledge to you tonight is contingent on this microphone working properly. I can't do it unless this microphone is working well. I also won't be able to be effective in communicating this chapter to you unless I ask you questions and keep you engaged and have fun visuals. So my ability to be effective is contingent on my ability to have relevant examples in this show here. So a leader's ability to be effective as a leader is contingent upon the situation in the organization. That is the key idea from tonight. So we'll talk about a bunch of these different approaches. And if you just think about this model often, you have to say to yourself, no matter how hard I try, no matter how smart I am, no matter how charismatic I am, no matter how talented I am, I'm only 1/3 of the ability to be effective. So how do I not only take my own personal traits and behaviors and style and understand what's happening with the group? How are the people in class paying attention tonight? How can I engage you? How can I be socially intelligent enough to see where we're at? A lot of times in academic pedagogy, they talk about this thing called prior knowledge. So when professors come into class and they try to start off the class, they usually try to see, okay, where is everybody? So if you ever take this assessment when you first come into a course, like a baseline assessment, those professors, we didn't do that here, but it's a leadership class, so I'm adapting on a regular basis. What we do is we take that information, we say, okay, here's what people know. What seems to be the majority of the people in the class know this concept. So I don't need to spend as much time here. But these concepts are fundamental to our ability to advance and say like algebra or geometry. So if they don't know these, we have to spend more time here. And so leaders are capable of doing that all the time, continuously. And then, of course, not only the group members, but all of us out in Outward Bound right now on a kayak going through the Thousand Islands in the Everglades. It's going to look a little different than it does right now in class. And so, would I be talking to you the way I'm talking to you now? Like, would we be in this constant like asymmetric dialogue where I'm speaking to the whole group at once for an hour and a half? No, it's not going to work like that. The way in which I behave in the context of an Outward Bound trip in the Everglades with all of us hanging out on kayaks is going to look way different than, and pretend like I'm still the group leader, but that's going to look way different than teaching you a class. I'm the same person, but I'm in a much different context or situation. Maybe you've had a coach in some realm of life, and whether it be in sports or whether it be a personal coach or whether it be a mentor, that person was really loud and energetic and helpful and had this extroverted personality and really encouraged you during that time. But that same coach in a physician's office with a bunch of doctors with that same style isn't probably going to be as effective in changing behaviors. So that person, that style in that context worked, but in this context, it's not going to work the same. So this is the concept. So we're comparing tonight this universalistic approach, which is this approach of, hey, I'm a leader. I have these traits and behaviors. I'm going to wield these traits and behaviors, and I'm going to get a certain kind of outcome. That's universal. This is who I am. This is my style. These are my behaviors. This is how I do things. And I'm just going to keep doing it. And if it doesn't work, then I got to go somewhere else. Like I got to change the situation, apparently, because how I behave is going to determine the outcomes. The contingency approach, as you can see, there's a multitude of different variables. That's kind of why it makes it a little bit complex, and I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. We have a leader. We have their style, traits, behaviors, and position. Position is very important because the kinds of power you have, the legitimate authority you have, it matters. It matters in the way in which you behave. Let's say that in this class, I was not the professor, but I knew as much as I knew about leadership. I was very passionate about leadership, and I really wanted to teach everybody. But I wasn't the professor of class. I would have to, I still am myself, but when we go into the small groups, I would have to maybe talk about certain things then. And when I had the chance to present, I would present a good amount. Maybe I would ask smart questions and I would engage in a different kind of way because my positional power isn't the same. It doesn't mean that I still can't influence that group, but my positional power, it matters. My point is to try to say that your position is a part of who you are. People see you not just as a person if you have a leadership role. They see you as an authority figure. And of course, the followers. What are the needs, the maturity, the training, the cohesion of my followers? What task, structure, systems, environment? This is the situation. What's going on here? And who's in charge? And what's the hierarchy look like? What kind of systems are in place or lack thereof systems? Is it snowing and 0 degrees outside, or is it 95 degrees and sunny? Like this is the environment. I mean, that's not the best way to explain the environment. But the point is there are things that are happening around us that we need to take into account before we decide how to behave. And that's a part of the contingency approach. And all of those things combined create some sort of outcome. So I'm just curious, like, and this is more just from my personal interest. Like, have you ever thought this hard about a leadership situation? Or is this, looking at this, you're like, oh my gosh, it's too complicated. Like, how could you ever assess all that kind of stuff at once? I just see something and I do something. You in the past, before you've seen models like this, How did you operate in the situation? Did you just see something and just do something, or did you stop and think and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" Like that's there's traits and then there's behaviors and there's styles. So what a trait and a behavior tend to culminate towards is a general style. So style is really the most abstract way of talking about it. Then you go behavior, which is a bit more granular, and then you go
Yeah.
trait, which is super granular. So
Right. Right.
style is more the propensity of action. The literature tends to lean in this direction too. Again, there's nothing that's conclusive, but we might have a default style, something that we default to when we're tired and hungry. This is just how we are, like without putting too much thought into it. But we're
Right.
all capable of becoming more, say, autocratic or more democratic. And that's the whole concept of this understanding style. We can deploy a tactic called appeal to personal relationships. So you appeal, say, "Hey, Jerry, how you doing, man? It's so nice to see you. I really enjoy the Sixers that just won the game. And oh, by the way, can you give me a stapler?" It's sort of like you're appealing to your personal relationship so that you can get something. Another tactic would be like, hey, rational persuasion. Hey, I got about 2 minutes and I have a presentation to give, and I have 20 things I need to staple to give out to this presentation. Can I grab your stapler real quick? Like, I don't, I just need a staple. Like, I'm not here to have a talk with you. I just need something. And that's perfectly acceptable. One of the interesting things, if you're in a position of leadership, that my leadership coach has taught me in the past is people want to talk to you. They want your presence. They want to talk to you. And somebody sort of chases you down in the hallway on your way to a meeting. And you could say that they say, "Hey, I really wanted to tell you something, leader." And you look at them and say, "Man, I want to hear that. I have about 2 minutes before my meeting. Go ahead. What's up?" And then they look at you and they're like, "Okay, well, can I say what I wanted to say within 30 seconds to a minute, and I don't want to make them late to this meeting." So what they may say to you is, "You know what? I'll catch you in your office after the meeting." Say, "Okay, cool. See you later. Bye." And so you have the ability to use these little tactics that sort of understand, like, hey, I want to be relational, but I'm also in this situation where I need to be initiating structure, and I need to be transactional because I'm on my way to doing something. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about some of those little tactics we can use in certain situations. A last one, just because it's on my mind, is if you find yourself sitting around talking with people and the conversation keeps going on and on. This is a kind of a crude one, but it works. It's funny how it works. Is I just clap my hands, I go, "Back to work." Okay, back to work. And it seems to work. Like, people get that. And like, "Oh, okay, you're right. We should probably go back to work now." And so obviously that's an interesting one to deploy, but you can also think about doing that as well. So laissez-faire, maybe you've heard this term in economics called free market economics is more laissez-faire, like do not intervene as a government. Just kind of see, so my two daughters have arguments, and my 10-year-old and my 5-year-old, they'll both come to me and they'll say, "Daddy," my 10-year-old will come and say, "So-and-so took this from me." And I would look at them and I'd say, "Do you want me to come in there? Because if I come in there, then I'm going to take it from both of you. Or you could figure it out on your own." And they're like, "Okay." And they go back to the room. So let it be. Like, they don't need me to intervene in this situation. If I intervene, it could actually make the situation worse for them. So just let them figure it out. I tell my wife this all the time. She likes to intervene, which is good. And sometimes I'm too laissez-faire in my parenting, but I sort of want them to argue it out. If that was the case, I would intervene. But so you get the point. So sometimes in leadership, it's good just not to do anything. Let them figure it out. A brief story for this particular style, in which case I did have to intervene, but it was interesting how it worked. I had he was a college football player. He's like 6'6", a guy who was running my landscape division. And then I had this other gentleman who was very feisty, and he was a project manager. He wasn't nearly as big, but he had this crazy attitude, and he was a go-getter. And one day the project manager parked his car next to the larger ex-football player landscape manager. And so his car was a little tight. So he pushed in the mirrors of the other person's car. And then this person, the landscape manager, got wind of it, that this guy touched my mirrors and pushed in the mirrors. And they sort of had this scuff. They didn't physically hit each other, but they were yelling at each other in the parking lot. And so I walk into the parking lot and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, what's going on, gentlemen? Like, why are we yelling? Ah, da, 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 da. I said, okay. Come on in my office. Like, let's talk about this like grown adults. They come in my office and this guy shares his story and this guy shares his story. And I go, okay. I said, "That's the first time I've seen you all kind of in conflict." They're like, "Yeah, this is." And next thing you know, I'm like just sitting there, and they go, "You know what? I'm sorry." And the other guys, "Yeah, I'm sorry too." Like, I didn't mean to come off so bad. And within 20 seconds, they're like hugging and they're best friends again. And I just pretty much sat there and was like, "All right, well, I guess we're good. We can move on with our day." So that's sort of like a I intervened autocratically. And then in that situation, there wasn't much I needed to do. I didn't need to discipline them and, lecture them on why we need to get along in the workplace. It just sort of happened. And so again, this is just depending on the situation, you can adapt a different approach. Charismatic leadership, we have situational leadership, which is what we're talking about tonight, which is like all of these. Leaders adapt their style to the competence and commitment of their followers. So I talked to a guy, he was a very high capacity leader, older gentleman, about to retire. He was leading 100 people in a couple of different departments in an electric co-op up in Minnesota. And his followers loved him. And he was there for like 16 years and he really did a great job. And he was about to retire and everybody was really worried. And he actually had his PhD in leadership. So as I was talking about leadership concept, I was hoping that I was getting them correct as I was talking to him. And he came up, we made friends, and he came up to me afterwards. He said, "What's your leadership style?" I said, I'm more of a servant leader. I like that style. It's kind of where I default, but it depends. And he goes, "It depends, huh?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, that's my leadership style. I'm a situational leadership. I do situational leadership." I'm like, "So you basically don't have a style. It just depends on the situation." He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." Like that's kind of what his style is. He doesn't have a style. He just figures it out based on the situation, which is what we're talking about tonight. Participative leadership. Talk about that more, and then strategic leadership. We'll have a little bit more on that as well. So participative leadership. I want to know, class, if we should get out of class tonight at 9 o'clock or if we should get out of class at 7:30. I'm going to let you all discuss this, and I'm going to let you all vote, and I'm going to leave the room, and I could go either way. It could be 9 o'clock, it could be 7:30. And whatever you all vote on, whatever the majority vote on, is wonderful. I'm soliciting opinions. But at the end of the day, I'm going to still make the decision. It's not a democratic leadership style. It's a participative leadership style. So I'm going to let you talk about it. I'm going to come back, and the vote's probably going to be what you just saw right there in a very small microcosm is what participative leadership conversation looks like. We all have something to say. We all have a way in which we're going to contribute to this decision. But at the end of the day, when I come into the room and everybody, the whole class says, "Hey, we all want to get out at 7:30, I still hold on to the authority as a participant leader, said, "Okay, thank you for that insight. I'll take that into consideration. I appreciate you being a part, giving me information into this decision-making process. But ultimately, I'm still going to make the decision." So it's not a true autocratic leadership, but it is allowing the input of the people. And so AB, I'll use this as an example. They're participative with the strategy at the Homestead campus. They want to know what our ideas are. They want to know what our insight is. They have these strategy meetings, and we try to contribute to the best that we can. But then we say at the end of the day, okay, well, what did that do? Like, are our ideas, is our information actually contributing to their ability to make strategic decisions, or are they just going to make that decision anyway? So how you deploy participative leadership matters. It matters how you garner this insight. It matters how you capture ideas. It matters how you demonstrate to the people's ideas. You follow up on them, say, "Thank you for that information. We're actually going to use that to make this decision based on what you said. We want you to be a leader of this particular campaign." So participative leadership is that. Democratic leadership, just to kind of juxtapose it to democratic leadership is a true consensus. It means that if we voted and the majority vote was to have class until 7:30, if I said I'm a democratic leader and this is my democratic style, and this is a democratic approach to participative leadership, then I would have to go with even though my vote is against 7:30, if the democratic approach would be to say, I have to abide by what the consensus says, what the majority vote is. So participative leadership are more consultative and I guess a little bit of consensus, and democratic to a degree. But also at the end of the day, I still reserve the right to make the decision myself. So participative leadership is consultative, that's consensus, and democratic leaders confer final authority to group members. So more, I guess this is saying, I said that I'm going to take a vote, then I would have to honor that vote. But if I just want to be a consultative and just get your insight, then that's a different approach. Consensus leaders strive for consensus in discussion. So consensus is a bit different. And so consensus, just to define it, means that we really do have to get everybody on the same page. Like, we have to get consensus. All of us have to agree before we move forward. And so as a participant leader, I'm going to try to build consensus amongst the group. And if somebody says, "No, we should get out at 7:30, I'm going to try to convince you as why 9 o'clock is right. And then I'm going to look at you and you're going to say, "Okay, 9 o'clock's fine." And now I've built consensus. And until it's kind of like a jury coming to a decision. It's like there can't be a hung jury. So that's consultative. I want to know what your opinion is. Ultimately, I'm going to make the final decision. Consensus, everybody has to agree before we move forward. And democratic is ultimately the group members. The vote is going to be what it is. Leader confers final authority to group members. So there's different aspects of participative leadership. By the way, and I think I told you last class, participative leadership can be time consuming. It can be a bit frustrating. There's a time and place for it, but it tends to be, you can't get as much done because of this participative process, that it can be a bit frustrating for the task-oriented leaders. Autocratic leadership we talked about last class. I want to get to servant leadership, but before we talk more about it, I want to show you this video. I wrote this book called Deemed Essential: Finding Greatness Through the Business of Serving Others, and I did a whole chapter on servant leadership. In the trade business, it was very obvious to me that a servant leadership style is what people grab. It was a bit servant leader after a while. Like there had to be an autocratic approach to get people in, get them hired, get them trained up. And then once we had the teams oriented, like they knew what they were doing, what they wanted somebody to help them. They wanted somebody to help them get the job done, encourage them, be on their team. And it tends to be that style was the one that worked the best for a seasoned trade business. And so this is the one later on in my career, which I seem to have found to be the most useful. And you'll see some of that in this video. The story in the video is the story of my transition from more of a, you'll get the idea when you watch it. Let me make sure I'm sharing my sound.
Welcome to Chapter 4 of Deemed Essential, the Servant Leader. In this chapter, we explore the profound impact of servant leadership, particularly in the trade service industry. Leadership stands out as the most effective approach. The concept of servant leadership, though practiced for centuries, was formally defined by Robert K. Greenleaf in his 1970 essay, The Servant as Leader. Greenleaf describes the servant leader as someone who first feels the desire to serve, which then leads them to aspire to lead. At its core, servant leadership is about nurturing, defending, and empowering followers. It's not just about guiding them in tasks. It's about addressing their needs, helping them grow, and equipping them to take on more responsibility. In Chapter 4, the author of Deemed Essential shares his journey of understanding this philosophy while managing his family business with over 100 employees. Initially, he relied on task-driven and authoritative methods that didn't yield long-term results. In one pivotal moment, he faced a crisis in team morale. Skilled technicians felt disconnected and unappreciated, and as performance metrics slipped, the company's growth was threatened. Instead of resorting to strict control or new policies, he chose to listen. In one conversation, a longtime technician voiced his frustration about being overlooked for promotions. This moment shifted the author's perspective. He realized that his success depended on his team more than they depended on him. By incorporating empathy, active listening, and open communication, he stopped merely assigning tasks and started understanding his team's needs and what they valued, also called balance. This approach allowed him to connect with what motivated his team members and then support them in ways that enhanced their drive and commitment. He decided to invest in this technician with a new company truck, opportunities for industry-specific certifications, and weekly one-on-one leadership coaching with goals to advance in his career. This once disengaged team member became a high-performance manager, boosting morale and contributing significantly to the company's growth. This change didn't just transform one individual. It created a ripple. Story reflects the essence of Deemed Essential, finding greatness through the business of serving others. What is your motive to lead? Is it for power and control? After reading Chapter 4, it should be clear that servant leadership in the trade service industry isn't about seeking power or status. It's an ongoing process of personal sacrifice and acceptance of responsibility. By continually uplifting others and focusing on their teams, leaders can build a culture of trust and shared responsibility that drives the business forward. To learn more about Deemed Essential, visit deemedessential.org. There you can get the book or watch more chapter highlight videos like this one, exploring the power of servant leadership and the...
Okay, comments. Does anybody sense that? Okay, so let me make one clarification. If you noted that in the video, I explained that the skilled technicians were the ones that got frustrated. Those were the ones who needed servant leadership. They needed to know what to do, how to do it, where the customers are, where's my car, where's my equipment. So it was the more seasoned employees that were starting to get frustrated, and some of them left. The concept of being emotionally extended, feeling as if you're emotionally invested into the people because you truly care about them. And then so that can be difficult, if not building up that conditioning, I guess be the right way to say it. And certainly without a doubt, if somebody is rookie to deploying this kind of leadership style, they can be naive, which means naive is not an excuse. It means you're lacking knowledge in a sense. So you could be naive to the fact that people are taking advantage of you or potentially manipulating you. If you're naive and you deploy this servant leadership style, you can be manipulated. And that's not a good thing. And it tends to be that there's betrayal lingering underneath that there's going to be a time where that it's going to be a painful betrayal. Either you're going to betray them or they're going to betray you somehow. And so these are some things to heed caution of. Obviously, there's a lot of positive to it. There's a lot of ways that this can work really well. And there's a lot of ways that if I was working under a servant leader, that I would work harder and be more committed to the organization because of this deployment style. But I'm also 41 years old and I have 3 degrees and I'm highly ambitious as it is. So again, this goes back to the contingency factor of who are these people? What is the situation? And then we're going to look at a few are they trained up? Are they ready? Are they competent? If so, we can deploy this stuff. I would say you're spot on with that. And naivety and looking like a fool is inevitable when you step into leadership. Let me be, it's not a bad thing. But that naivety, you then realize, oh man, I was naive or I was foolish. And then a good leader learns from that situation, learns from that circumstance, adapts, gets better, and improves, and says that's not gonna happen again. So yeah, that's good comment there, Liam. All right, so I'm not going to read all this about servant leadership. A few other things: place service before self-interest, listen first to express confidence in others, inspire trust by being trustworthy, recognize own limitations, be bold with respect to values, morality, and doing the right things. A couple other key aspects here. We saw the video. And so this is a good one to look up. I'm just going to read about him for a moment. I was trying to find a good video on him, but I couldn't find one. But this guy, he was a legendary servant leader, Ken Melrose. He's the late CEO of a company called Toro. Toro makes lawnmowers, and they make all sorts of landscaping equipment, and they're still very good at it. One of the Toro zero-turn mowers is one of the best in the industry, and he really took drastic action to save Toro in 1983, including 57% of workforce reduction. He had to lay off a bunch of people. So he changed corporate culture to one that empowered, trusted, and valued employees. So I went through this transformation in my own leadership style, truly, and of good things came from it. A lot of great things came from it, but then a lot of tough things came from it as well. So this is an example of good things happening. And again, back in the landscape industry, so you can see that there might be a certain kind of industry or context where servant leadership works better. Melrose attributed the new financial success of the company to doing what is right. Believe that servant leadership has three components. Every employee has potential to do good work. I like to say it like this: everyone can be great because everybody can serve. So one of the easy things that there was so much happening within this organization. So as a leader, I'm trying to get you to think through this yourself. Like there's a lot happening in your day. That we had a lady in my previous class. She was going through so much work stress, and she enjoyed the class because she was able to just kind of sense make and process some of her work stress by talking about these leadership concepts. And so she's just going through a lot. And all we talked about when we talked about servant leadership, hey, just do the next right thing. Just come with a servant's heart. Just know that you can contribute to every person, every situation. You can just pick up the trash off the floor. Just do it, and do it gracefully, gratefully. Be happy while you're doing it. You'll always find someone or something to do and someone to help. And so I say everybody can be great because everybody can serve. So this also says B is potential can be realized when an employee is inspired, valued, engaged, empowered, and recognized. I'll change that to say the right employee can realize their potential when they're inspired, valued, engaged, empowered, and recognized. Certain people can fit under this umbrella. Certain people, we have to not be naive. They may not be able to fit under that umbrella. They may be there for their own self-interest. They may be criminals. I mean, hey, we dealt with a lot of criminals in our business, and we had to realize when somebody was lying and cheating and stealing versus when they were telling the truth. Leader must create such an environment. Melrose's version of servant leadership had a religious bent in terms of serving people, believed that running an organization, it should be an organization, with character and soul leads to financial success. Next style that we're kind of just going to elaborate more of is this entrepreneurial leadership style. An entrepreneur is a person who founds or operates an innovative business. That is not a great definition of entrepreneurship. Anybody can be an entrepreneur. You can think and act entrepreneurially. You don't necessarily need to found or own a business to be entrepreneurial. But anyways, that's the way the book describes it. An entrepreneurial CEO is a leader involved in developing and managing a portfolio of new ventures. Many entrepreneurs have a recognizable personality pattern. The entrepreneurial leadership style often incorporates the following behaviors: strong achievement drive and sensible risk-taking, high degree of enthusiasm and passion, typical pattern of being proactive, tendency to act quickly when opportunity arises, visionary perspective combined with tenacity. So again, back to the concept here, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that this style is also a part of a role. So there has to be a little bit of this that is taken on. Like we have to be entrepreneurial as leaders at times. I'm sure some of you can see how that style could be possibly overbearing. That style could be possibly too much at times. It could be like too much of a good thing. If you had just strictly an entrepreneurial leader, what tends to happen with a person who has this entrepreneurial bent, once they succeed in their vision, they find, I won't generalize, but it tends to be that entrepreneurial leader either needs to learn how to manage better, be a little bit more governing, or they need to get out of a leadership role and they need to give somebody else the leadership role because they don't have the skills necessary to set the, as companies get bigger, we know that they need to departmentalize and they know they need processes and procedures, and all of these things stifle and kill off the entrepreneurial spirit in a lot of ways. Like, this is my own company. Now I got to go through like 4 different people to get a check. Like, what the heck is that? But that's actually a good thing. But sometimes people who are too entrepreneurial, they don't really thrive in that kind of environment. So, anyways, that's entrepreneurial leadership. There's a lot of literature because it's an interesting topic and somewhat controversial in some ways of gender differences in leadership styles. And so, if you can just imagine some basic gender differences in general, you would possibly see how a female leader would gravitate towards one style, where a male leader, a stereotypical male leader, and a stereotypical female leader might gravitate towards a different style. So one argument is that women have certain acquired traits and behaviors that suit them for relations-oriented leadership. Pioneering study found that men tended towards a command and control style, which would be a little bit more autocratic, more transactional. In contrast, women tended towards transformational style and interpersonal skills. So more motivation and more, I'm going to look at your personal values and we're going to go on this mission together. Study found that women release more oxytocin than men. This is a neurotransmitter, chemical in your brain that allows people to relax a little bit more, like anxious-free presence, resulting in more empathy, cooperation, and trust. How women over the last, let's say, 100 years, after a multitude of different things that happened in society, have really came into the workforce in full volume, and the amazing aspects that has created for our economy and our society. There are some downsides as well, but of course we can talk about what it means to have women in positions of leadership within organizations and within our economy. So, all right, selecting the best leadership style. So we know now we're going to get into the contingency approaches. I'm going to try to get these. Now that we know what styles are, now we need to realize, okay, Claude, thank you so much for explaining all of these styles and confusing us with all of these different ways of behaving and thinking about these things. So what we now need to think about is what kind of behaviors we gravitate towards, because those behaviors we gravitate towards will likely show up. If we keep gravitating towards those behaviors, a style will manifest itself. And so what are these behaviors? Well, remember we talked last class, and I'm going to remind you about these task-oriented behaviors and relationship-oriented behaviors. So take a look at this diagram. I know it's a lot, but I'm going to try to walk through it. Relationship behaviors on the vertical axis. This measures how much a leader focuses on people, supporting, encouraging, listening, and building trust. Very important. All right. All right, so if we're high task, remember task, this measures how much a leader is focused on the work itself. High task and low relationship, this is more directive or authoritative style. The leader focuses heavily on structure, expectations, and results. This works well with tasks that need clarity, speed, or close supervision. So where are we at? We're high task. So task is here, task behavior. We're high task, low relationship. So we're more authoritative style, plan short-term activities, clarify tasks, you get the idea. And so an example would be training a new employee during a busy shift. So there is a need at times for somebody to be high task, low relationship. Again, example, training a new employee during a busy shift. All right, so now let's look at high task, high relationship. High task is here, this axis. High relationship is this axis. So we're operating right here. High task, high relationship. This is a coaching style. The leader provides clear direction while also offering support and encouragement. The focus is on both performance and development. An example is helping a motivated employee learn a new responsibility. Remember the clarifying statement, a motivated employee learn a new responsibility. High task, high relationship. So how about low task, high relationship? Low task, this way. High relationship, this way. So we're here. Low task, high relationship. This is a supportive or participative style. The leader involves followers in decisions, encourages input, and focuses on confidence and relationship building more than direct instruction. So an example here would be coaching an experienced employee through a challenge. Low task, high relationship. Makes sense. Last one. Low task, low relationship. This is a delegating style. The leader turns over responsibility and allows the follower to work independently with minimal oversight. Some people might think low task, low relationship is a bad thing. Not necessarily. It's delegating. Example would be trusting a senior employee to run a project on their own. Low task, low relationship. Perfectly fine. Now, it is your turn to do so let's go. Where is it? Okay, I have it coming up soon. So, all right, this model is, now that we understand a little bit about tasks, now that we understand a little bit about relationship, we're going to go into our first situational theory model, which I'm going to try my best to walk you through. And so this is what it looks like. So take a look at this leadership style. Both of these charts here play in together. So if I can hold your attention, take a look at this and try to pay attention, because this will definitely help you. So the whole point of this is to match your leadership style to the readiness of the follower. So your style, follower's readiness. So there is not one best leadership style. The best leaders adjust based on confidence, skill, willingness, motivation. So the axes, which is the horizontal or task behavior. So horizontal is going this way, task behavior. We just kind of talked about that a little bit, low or high. The task behavior is how much direction the leader gives, what needs to be done, how should it be done, by when. High task, clear instruction. Low task, less direction. The vertical axis is the relationship behavior, how much emotional support the leader gives, how are you doing, what support do you need, how can I help. High relationship is encouragement, listening, and coaching. Low relationship is less support. And so here's the key here. So we have S1, which is the telling style. So this is the first little quadrant we're going to talk about. And it's important to understand that there is a time and place for the telling style. Telling style is high task, low relationship. Here's what to do. Follow these steps. The leader gives specific instructions, closely supervises, defines roles clearly, use when follower is unable, not like new, unable to do it, and or unwilling or insecure in the position. Can anybody think of an example where using the telling style would absolutely work appropriately? Can you think of like an air traffic controller on the first day of work? I'm thinking in my mind like a switchboard operator. So this is a brand new employee on day one. Just think about this telling style. They don't know where to clock in. They don't know how to use the systems. They need a checklist. They need a step 1, 2, and 3. That you need to be very direct. They are trying to learn, but without your guidance, they're not going to learn. So talking about how they're doing all day long and listening to their stories about their family isn't what's going to help them on their first day is probably the wrong way to say that. Their first time in the driver's seat of the race car. I mean, that's a great one. I went to a track in the Poconos, and I did not necessarily at this time know how to drive stick shift very well. And this family that I stayed with, because I went to school up in Connecticut for a while, and I went home for the weekend, they took me to this track, and they said, "Hey, do you know how to drive stick shift?" I said, "Yeah." And then I was about to get into like a legit race car and drive around this track. And I was like pretending as if I was not petrified. And what did I need at that time? I needed someone to be like, "Hey, listen, step 1, step 2. First of all, I needed somebody to probably come in the car with me and like do a lap with me, and I'll sit. I don't even know if they had passenger seats. Like, I needed a little bit of a walkthrough first. Like, I was gonna die on this thing unless you told me exactly what I needed to do. I didn't need you to just empower me at the moment and trust me that I knew how to drive this race car. It actually turned out for some weird reason that I wasn't able to be in it. Like they needed somebody else to use the car or something. And I was like, "Oh, no problem. You can take mine." And so I didn't have to embarrass myself or die. So that would be a situation where what I needed was high task, low relationship. The story just came back to me. And then so here's S2. This is the selling. High task, high relationship. Here's what we're doing. So we're in this quadrant now. S2, selling. Here's what we're doing. Here's why. You give direction as a leader. You explain decisions. You answer questions. You encourage buy-in. And you use when followers are unable. They're not really able to do it specifically, but they're willing and they're confident. So this is, I always say the situation like this. Like I talked about not knowing how to train dolphin. I love dolphin. I want to learn how to train dolphin. I'm ready. I'm ambitious. I'll be there with my swimsuit at 6 a.m, ready to feed the dolphins some fish. Like, come on, give it to me. But I'm unable. Like I don't know how to train it. I don't know how to use the whistle. I don't know how to use the little hoop. I don't know the dolphins' names. I don't know the commands. So you can explain decisions and provide opportunity for clarification. So that would be more of a selling. You don't need to tell me, be so direct, but you need to probably sell it to me. So an example here would be new hire who is motivated and eager, but doesn't yet know how. Leader says, "I love the energy. Let me show you the process and walk you through why we do this, why we do it this way." This is teaching and encouragement on the selling style. Okay, so now we have S3, participating. So now we're moving to this quadrant over here. Participating is low task, high relationship. Let's work through this together. Leader facilitates discussion, listens, supports confidence, shares decision-making, use when follower is able. They know how to do it already. They've been doing it for a while. They've clearly demonstrated their competency in doing this. They're able, but they're sort of unwilling to do it. They know how to do it. They get it. They just don't want it. They get it and they have the capacity to do it, but they just don't quite want it. So the leader might have to participate in the task with them. So that's the more S3 participating style. Example is an experienced employee who knows the job, but has lost motivation or confidence. Leader says, "You know how to do this. What's holding you back right now?" Less directing, more coaching. You could see how a directing approach in a situation like that might not work. It might push the employee further away. So that's why the participating leadership style works better in that situation. So S4 is delegating. We're down here now. Low task, low relationship. I trust you, run with it. Leader turns over responsibility, empowers decision-making, minimal oversight. Use when follower is able and willing and confident. So this is the laissez-faire leadership. Like they get it, they're able, they're willing and confident. Here's the task. Go ahead, do it, take care of it. Example is a senior employee who has done this successfully for years. Leader says, you own this project. Keep me posted if you need anything. Full trust. This is the kind of stuff if a student comes to me and says, I did a personality assessment, but I'm not sure if it's the right one. And I turned it into Canvas, but I'm worried that you might grade it in a way that I didn't, do it right. And I say, listen, this is as long as you turned it in, as long as you took the personality assessment, as long as you learned from it, good job. Like, I trust you. I believe in you. I want to encourage you. You're doing this for yourself, not for me. Okay. Moving on, Fiedler's contingency model, a model designed to diagnose whether a leader is task-oriented or relationship-oriented and match leader style to the situation. So this has got a couple different levels to it. So if you're interested in learning more about how to use this model to be more effective as a leader, we have to walk through this one step at a time. Step number one, what is your style? And he's just basically putting the style down to two ways. Say, of all these styles, there's 10 of them, sure, whatever. I just want to know, are you relationship-oriented or are you task-oriented? That's it. So Fiedler's saying, which one are you? And one of the ways in which he scores this, which is a very interesting way of scoring it, he says, I want all of you right now in class, so I'm going to go ahead and try to get you to score this now. I can't administer this survey, but I want you to think about your least preferred coworker. So this is the person, when they come around, you're just like, oh, when they present at the meetings, you're like, oh, man. When you have to work with them and you're assigned them, you're just like, man, I sort of wish I had a different partner. Whatever this least preferred coworker, I kind of biased you a little bit there. So think about that person. Now, if you were to write 5 descriptions of that person, like just describing them as a person, how would you describe them? And so what Fiedler is proposing, that the people that would describe that person, that essentially the coworker is described by rating that person on a series of polar opposite adjectives, such as pleasant versus unpleasant. People that this is how they're testing whether or not you're relationship-oriented or task-oriented, by the way, is this least preferred coworker method. A person who is relationship motivated, those leaders tend to describe their least preferred coworker in favorable terms. Like, oh, they're really nice and they're energetic. And, yeah, they're not great at like doing work on the computer, but, they're fun to be around. Like, even though they're least preferred as a coworker, but you still describe them in a positive way. So if that's the case, if you were thinking about that person and you thought about some ways to describe them, and you were fairly positive about those ways to describe them, that means you're most likely more relationship motivated as a style, as a leader. If you are describing them negatively, like they're sort of lazy or they're incompetent, like whatever those words may be, and they don't get the job done, whatever you're thinking, those people who are describing it in that way, that least preferred coworker, they're more task motivated leaders. They tend to describe the least preferred coworker in unfavorable terms. So the relationship-oriented leader should be able to work well with a variety of personalities. So being more relationship-oriented kind of gives you access to whether you're least preferred or most preferred, you're still able to work well with them. So again, that's just kind of gauging so that's step number one. Am I more task-oriented or am I more relationship-oriented? Which style do I gravitate towards more? So Fiedler's saying there's a good chance, Fiedler's proposing this, that you're not going to change your style. Like, you're going to be task-oriented because you just are. Like, good luck trying to change it. That's going to be the way you are. Versus the people who are relationship oriented, like, good luck trying to be more task oriented. You just care about people more than other people. So you're probably going to stick to that style. So he's saying, know that about yourself. So here's a little bit more of a better assessment of that. So imagine you are appointed leader of a student group facing pressure to improve performance. Read each of these 10 statements below. For each statement, decide, would this be a mostly true or mostly false for you as a leader? Circle or mark your answer honestly. There are no right or wrong responses. You will score yourself at the end. Task orientation. Question is, I would hold members personally accountable for their performance. Mostly true, mostly false. Number 2, I would assign members to specific roles and tasks. Mostly true, mostly false. 3 is I would ask the members to work harder. Mostly true, mostly false. 4 is I would check on people to know how they are doing. Mostly true, mostly false. 5 is I would focus more on execution than on being pleasant with members. This one's interesting. I would check on people to know how they're doing. Doesn't seem to be task. People orientation. I would try to make members work more pleasant. I would try to make them enjoy their work more. 7, that's mostly true, mostly false. 7, I would focus on maintaining a pleasant atmosphere on the team. 8 is I would let members do their work the way they think best. 9 is I would be concerned with people's personal feelings and welfare. 10 is I would go out of my way to be helpful to members. Okay, so count your mostly true scores for each section. So for 1 through 5, count mostly true. So however many you had in this section, how many mostly trues you had in this section would be your task score. And then your people orientation would be questions 6 through 10. How many mostly truths did you have there? And so that you can compare. If you're 4 to 5 on task, then you're task oriented. If you're 4 to 5 on people, you're people oriented. And you could be high on task, and you could be high on people. That's fine. It tends to be that usually one person's higher on one than the other, if you're honest. I mean, again, you could be high on both, but the median is probably going to have one a little bit higher than the other. Okay, so that's just kind of getting you to think about whether or not you're task-oriented or whether or not you're people-oriented. And now Fiedler says, great, now that you know, now you have to look at a situation. Now we're going to look at 3 variables with the situation. How do you analyze a situation, Professor Kershner? Well, let me tell you. Analyzing, number 1, group atmosphere and members' attitudes towards and acceptance of the leader. You have to say, okay, what the heck is going on between the leader and the members? What's the atmosphere and the members' attitudes towards the acceptance of the leader? That's going to be something you're going to have to think about. Number 2 is the task structure. Extent to which tasks performed by the group are defined, involve specific procedures, and have clear, explicit goals. Are the tasks clear? If the tasks are not clear, they're somewhat ambiguous, you have low task structure. If the atmosphere and members and attitudes towards acceptance of the leader is low, you have poor leader-member relations. So are you poor leader-member relations, low task structure? And then the last one, or are you high task structure, very clear, and good leader-member relations. So those are 2 things to look at. And the last one is position power. I talked about this a little bit more in class. The extent to which the leader has formal authority over subordinates. How much authority do I have over them versus how little authority do I have or the leader has over them. So you have to look at the situation based on these 3 variables. Relations between leaders and members. The task structure. Is it clear? Is it explicit? Does it have clear goals? And then the position power. In order to analyze the situation, you have to look at those 3 things. And now Fiedler's contingency theory says this. Observable pattern in the relationships among leadership style, situational favorability, and group task performance. Task-oriented leaders are effective in highly unfavorable or highly favorable situations. So let's go back here. I know this is somewhat interesting. So let's say that you have terrible leader-member relations, you have terrible task structure, and you have low position power. A relationship-oriented leader is going to do well there. Let's also say that you have really, really high leader-member relations, really, really high structure, and really, really high position power. It also means that in a situation where highly favorable situations, a task-oriented leader is going to do better there as well. So sorry, I said the wrong thing. Task-oriented leaders are good in highly unfavorable and highly favorable situations. Relationship-oriented leaders are effective in moderately favorable situations. So if any of these is sort of like, sort of murky, leader-member relations are okay, but not great. Task structure is there, but not super clear. Position power is strong, but really not that strong. That's where relationship-oriented leaders come in and win. Task-oriented leaders, again, are better in really, really high situations on all 3 of these, or really, really low situations on all 3 of these. They create clarity, or they just execute. If all these are really high, you need a task person to just execute. Just get it done. If they're really, really low, you need somebody to come in and take clarity, take control. So here's the same thing I just said in a visual depiction. Highly favorable situation, task-oriented leader is more effective. Moderately favorable situation, going back over here, you've done your analysis, leader-member relations, really high, it's moderate. Task structure, moderate. Position power, sort of moderate. Then you go here, you say, okay, moderately favorable situation, relationship-oriented leader is more effective. Highly unfavorable situation, terrible leader-member relations, low task structure, very ambiguous. Position power isn't great, super low. You need a task-oriented leader. That's a highly unfavorable situation. Task-oriented leader is more effective. Whew. That's Fiedler's approach. Super complex, super complicated. You're looking at the situation. You're looking at the task, whether you're task-oriented or whether you're relationship-oriented. It's basically saying that, if you're not a task-oriented leader, this is a really interesting concept if you're still following me. If you're not a task-oriented leader, then you're not going to do well in a moderately favorable situation. If things are sort of middle of the road, it's actually better you find another situation than you try to be good in that environment. That's what this situation is saying. It's saying don't change the leader based on the situation. It's saying change the situation. Take the leader and put them in a situation where they'll thrive naturally. Don't try to take a leader, put them in a situation that they're not naturally good at and get them to change their style. Don't do that, is what Fiedler says. Take a look at the strengths of a leader and put them in a situation where they're already suited for those kinds of things. So if you're looking at a company takeover and it's a merger and acquisition, it's hostile, and you need someone to go in and execute, like things are super chaotic, you're probably going to want a task-oriented leader because, according to Fiedler, a relationship-oriented leader will not thrive in that environment. Let's say you have a company, it's a family business, people are sort of happy, it's been around for a while, and you're trying to hire like an HR professional, and you just want to add some clarity to the organization, and things are going pretty well. A relationship-oriented leader is the most beneficial in that situation, according to Fiedler. If you brought in a task-oriented leader in that situation, they'll actually make things a little bit worse.
Right.
So, and then vice versa, if all of these are super terrible. If you look at this and nothing makes sense, the leader-member relations are crap. You need somebody to come, excuse my language, you need somebody to come in and then it's highly unfavorable situation according to Fiedler, the most sophisticated aircraft in the world. Let's say this thing is zoomed up and ready to go. What do you need? You need the best pilot in the world that knows how to fly that thing like thunder. You know what I mean? That's what you want, a high task-oriented pilot. And then you take another look at a situation. Let's take a look at a bunch of junkyard filled with plane parts. You also want a task-oriented leader with a junkyard filled with plane parts to say, hey, man, we need to make this junk and turn it into a plane. So a task-oriented leader is going to be able to do that. All this is saying is that you would be more, according to Fiedler, again, I'm always prefacing that, and this is one of the most popular situational leadership models there, in situations with unfavorable situation or highly favorable situation. Anything moderate, a person who is more relationship-oriented, not as much task-oriented, would be better in a moderate situation. So it's saying that, let's stick with that example for a second. Let's pretend like you had a choice. You could either choose this situation or that situation, and you're a task-oriented leader. Fiedler's saying, do not choose the moderately favorable situation. You're not going to thrive there. Your task-oriented nature will actually make things worse. He's saying, go to the unfavorable situation or go to the highly favorable situation. You will thrive better in those environments. And he's telling the relationship-oriented leaders here in this class or crowd that have a higher relationship bent, that a moderately favorable situation is where you're going to thrive the best. If I could break this down, I'm a relationship-oriented leader. Let's just say that I am. Let's just say that I was. Whatever. Anyways, let's say that I am. If I was asked to go into an organization and fire half of the people that work there, I would struggle with that. What if I fire them? Then I would be able to take control, and the company sucks, and nobody's earning any money, and you need to go in, you need to fire people, and once you fire people, you need to build your leadership team, you need to totally recreate the structure, and you have this wonderful leadership opportunity. I would say, you know what? I don't know if that situation is right for me because I'm more of a relationship-oriented leader. I'd rather go into an existing organization that needs to grow 20% over the next 5 years, probably needs to fire 1 or 2 people and hire 3 or 4 other people. Like, I would probably be better in that situation. Therefore, I'm going to choose the latter as opposed to the former. Whereas some people are saying, you know what, I'd love that situation where I can come in and be a high impact leader and create structure from chaos. So this is back to the model. Like, what can we take from this model that we can apply that makes sense? So Fiedler has gotten a lot of criticism from this model, obviously, because it's multi-leveled and somewhat complex. But so here are the things that are said about it. Know whether the leader has a relationship or task orientation. Diagnose the situation to determine if the leader member, task structure, and position power are favorable or unfavorable. Fiedler's contingency theory is generally supported by research studies, but has limitations. LPC, the least preferred coworker score, is overly simplistic model of leaders' orientation. So that little thing I said, think about the person on your team, and you get this 5 different ways you can describe them: pleasant, unpleasant, fun, not fun, and you have to pick one. It's too simplistic. So it's not a good gauge of whether or not one is task oriented or people oriented. And it cannot predict optimal leader behavior for evolving situations. And it does not include leaders with medium LPC scores. So this would be the LPC score here is, say, a 3 for task. We'll say a 2 for task and a 3 here. So it's like a medium. It's better for those, like I was just trying to explain, that is a 1 for task and a 4 and a 5 here. That's like clear. Okay, I'm a people-oriented leader. Like, what if somebody's sort of middle of the road? The model doesn't really help for them. Yeah, so that one's tough. I'll be honest. It's needing to be taught because it's in all the leadership books, but it is the foundation. He was the first person, this guy Fiedler, to bring up this situation and propose a model for trying to diagnose the situation. And again, one of the most interesting things is that different than the contingency approach, Fiedler's different than other situational approach. Fiedler's model says look at a situation and bring in a leader that matches the situation. Don't take a leader and try to get the leader to adjust their style based on the situation. So Fiedler's saying that that's a losing proposition. But the other theories, again, what I'm proposing is that you can adjust your style based on the situation. Fiedler just didn't agree with that. Okay, here's another one. Contingency approach, where the leader's responsibility is to increase followers' motivation to attain personal and organizational goals. This is called the path goal theory. If you remember, we looked at the elephant and the rider, very similar concept. So what do we do as leaders? We want to clarify the follower's path to the available rewards. Here's how you get an A in a class. If you want to make $100,000 this year, I want to make sure you understand that you have an $80,000 a year salary, plus a $10,000 a year opportunity for bonus, plus $10,000 a year for overtime. Here's how your bonus works. Here's how overtime works. Do you have any questions? It's clarifying the follower's path to their available rewards, making sure they're clear on how to attain their goal. Help followers identify behaviors that lead to successful task accomplishments. This is an important one too. If you want to attain your bonus, let me show you that coming in at this particular time, doing this particular report, making sure you're on this many calls a week, these are things that tend to lead to your success. So you have a leader who's articulating the goal, saying these are available to you and here are the behaviors that it's going to take in order to attain that. Do you want to attain this? Do you value this goal? Okay, yes. Okay, here's what you need to do. Increase rewards that the follower values, the valence, and desires. Leader talks with followers to learn what rewards are important to them. This is very important. Are you intrinsically or extrinsically motivated? Would you like more time off? Is that helpful to you? Do you need more compensation for merit score? Like, what do you value? We all don't value the same thing. A good leader who applies this situational leadership style and path goal understands we have to articulate the goal, but we also have to understand what does the person on our team value? Do they want this goal? Do they care about this goal? Here's what this looks like. The path goal theory. The main idea is simple. The leader's job is to help people succeed by clearing the path and increasing motivation along the way. A strong leader helps followers understand, number one, what needs to be done, number two, how to do it, and why it is worth doing. Increase rewards. Leaders first understand what matters to their followers. They ask, what motivates this person? What do they value? Then the leader connects performance to a meaningful reward. Recognition, growth, flexibility, bonus pay, promotion, trust. So recognition would be extrinsic. Growth would probably be intrinsic in a way. Flexibility would be intrinsic. Bonus pay is extrinsic. Promotion is extrinsic. Trust is intrinsic. When people see value in the outcome, motivation increases. Then you have to clarify the path. Leaders also remove confusion and obstacles. They make the path clearer by defining expectations, explaining roles, providing resources, coaching through challenges, and this builds confidence and helps followers feel capable of succeeding. Increase rewards, clarify path. What happens? What's the result? When leaders increase rewards and clarify the path, followers tend to show greater effort, higher motivation, stronger performance, and that leads to better organizational results. An example is a manager notices an employee wants to grow in leadership. The manager says, if you lead this project successfully, I'll give you visibility with senior leadership and help prepare you for promotion. Then the manager explains the goal, outlines expectations, provides support. Now the employee is both motivated by the reward, very important, and clear on the path forward. That's path goal theory in practice. So last comment here, the key takeaway is leaders motivate by making the goal valuable, and this chapter is important. The usefulness of understanding your propensity and style and being able to assess a situation, not just from Fiedler's approach, but all different approaches, looking at the follower's readiness, and then being able to say, I think I know what to do in this situation. Let me try it. And then when you try it, something happens. You say, oh, that worked. Or maybe it didn't work. And then the next day, the next situation, you try something else, you try something new. It's a powerful concept. I hope you can deploy it.